It is Thursday night. I am Stephen Willis alongside the Hammer and Boss Man Slim from Biscuits and SEC, and we're talking about the week in the SEC that is about to happen. Week 4 is about to start. Boss Man, how you doing?
Doing good, Steven. Thanks for having us, man. Week 4, we got a lot of big games. Excited to get into it.
Yeah, exactly. Hammer, we'll start with you on this one. Ole Miss plays Alabama this weekend. It's likely big game. Although SEC Nation and all that is not going there. They're going to be in College Station. And they're just going to ignore the top 15 matchup that is going on. That's kind of bizarre. But this is a game, my opinion on this one is Ole Miss needs to prevent explosive plays to Jalen Milroe. If you can keep him from throwing the deep ball and completing them down the field and make him drive the ball, you can keep that score down, because I figure anything north of 30 points, Ole Miss is going to have trouble scoring that many against that defense. But anything below that, it might be advantage Rebels.
I totally agree. I'm really interested to see coming into this one what the Bama offense looks like in general, because a lot of the criticisms when Milroe was the starter is, people said, hey, the guy clearly is not a pocket passer, right? He's not going to be able to beat you slinging the ball over the yard. So maybe we need to incorporate more of designed runs for him, because he is extremely difficult to handle in the run game. We didn't really see that, obviously. And then last week against USF, he didn't play at all. Now he's back QB1. Saban seems to have rubber stamped him theoretically for the rest of the year. I think that would be smart based on what we saw from the other two quarterbacks. So interested to see what Tommy Rees's plan is now going into a must win for Alabama, right? I mean, if you don't go to the playoffs and win a title, or at least are in the conversation at Alabama, it's not a successful season. They've already lost once. They don't really have another mulligan, so they need to win it. So obviously, I think he's going to empty out his bag. I don't really know what all he's got in his bag, but he's going to empty it out. So luckily for the Rebels, they've got Pete Golding, right? And he knows better than anybody what makes Milroe uncomfortable. So I think regardless of what Alabama throws that maybe they haven't done yet this season at Ole Miss, so anything that might surprise Ole Miss, I still think over the course of 4 quarters, Golding is going to be able to figure out, simply because he knows him so well, how to counteract that. So I think Ole Miss should have, as you mentioned, if they can limit explosive plays, have a really sound defensive plan going into this one.
Exactly. And Boss Man, Ole Miss on offense, it looks like they're going to get 2 of their 3 weapons back from injury in Zachary Franklin and Caden Prieskorn. And we don't know about Trey Harris. I think Trey Harris might line up and play as well, but we're not sure about that one. This offense could look actually a little bit different than it has in the first 3 games, where Ole Miss is 4th in the country in scoring and about 7th in total offense without those guys.
Yeah, what a scary thing for Alabama, for Ole Miss to get those guys back this week. One, because you haven't really seen them on film, so you don't know what that's going to look like and how they're going to incorporate them into the offense. But also just knowing that those guys were all highly touted coming out of the portal. So you have this Ole Miss offense that's been humming. Jackson Dark's been playing well. He's been finding all sorts of different targets in the absence of those guys. So now you get those guys back. You've been on your heels, for the Tide now for a couple weeks. But at the same time, like the Tide have been on their heels, but it's not really the defense. The defense has been playing very well. They have dudes all over the field, just like everybody thought. Really, it's been the offense. It's been the offensive line that's been an issue, which is surprising because, they've recruited well there. They're Alabama. Of course they do. And it's been Jalen Milroe or Tyler Buckner and Ty Simpson, depending on who's been playing quarterback. So the big thing that I'm interested in here, I was interested in that to see if Ole Miss was going to get those guys back. I do think that's a big factor. This might be crazy to say, but right now, I think advantage Ole Miss as far as the coaching staff goes. And that has to do with the fact that Lane Kiffin and Pete Golding know the inside and outside of Alabama, as Hank was alluding to. And the Alabama coaching staff right now is kind of a mess. Nick Saban is the GOAT. We all know he's the greatest of all time. Not going to say he's not. But he might have made a huge mistake in hiring Tommy Rees. We'll see here over the next few weeks. I think you're right, too. Just to touch on it for a second, is the Ole Miss is going to try and keep everything in front of them. I think the 3 keys for them are get pressure on Jalen Milroe, play maybe 2 high safeties, try to keep things in front of you, try and make Jalen Milroe beat you in the intermediate passing game instead of getting a couple deep shots over the top, that's as a passer, that's really where he shines sometimes. Had a couple of great deep balls against Texas. And maybe try to disguise some coverages. And then the final thing is keep contained, because I have a feeling that this time around they're going to have a different game plan. And Jalen Milroe, they're really going to try and use his legs. So it's got to be keep contained, maybe put a spy on him. You might know better than I will as to who Ole Miss might try to put a spy on Jalen Milroe. But that's kind of what I think. And overall, I think this is going to be a lower scoring game. I picked this one 34-31 in our Biscuits and SEC preview. I'm thinking it's actually going to be a little bit lower scoring than that, frankly, just because of Alabama's defense, and I don't think Alabama can score that much. So I do think Ole Miss is going to win this one, though. I'm taking the Rebs to win.
Hammer, what you got, bud?
Same. I picked the Rebs to win in our previews. I think I picked like 26 21. I was kind of banking on some, weird Lane Kiffin 4th down / 2-point conversion score. But I do think it'll be lower scoring. And, I've seen this said several places here, right? But it's like, if not now, when, for not just Ole Miss, but really the rest of the SEC West. I mean, Bama has had a stranglehold on this division really since Saban got there, outside of a handful of years when LSU or Auburn has snuck up on them. But what they've shown through 3 games so far, I think the rest of the SEC West has to be looking at this and thinking, all right, this is our year, man. This is our chance to get them back, because they look pretty vulnerable. So I like the Rebels in this one.
Yeah, and if you look at my prediction for this game, I've got Ole Miss 27-21. So pretty close to you, Hammer, on your call as well. I do think the game is going to look more like 2014 than 2015 in an Ole Miss win over Alabama. So let's go to College Station. And this is an interesting game. And this is the game that think it has the most America's Cup potential. I think this has a chance to be a boat race. And that is because I don't think Auburn is particularly good. And I think that they'll be bad enough offensively that DJ Durkin and those athletes are going to be able to control things. But offensively, hey, A&M's got some stuff. Connor Weigman's a dude. You got Rod receiving core. I mean, give me some of that. I'm looking forward to seeing exactly what they can do. But I really like Texas A&M in this game. Hammer, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I mean, I think from what we've seen so far, right, A&M has played 2 bad teams, and then they got beat badly by Miami, mostly in the downfield passing game where Van Dyke was able to pick them apart. They had really just poor tackling in the secondary and couldn't get enough pressure on him. So what I'm interested to see in this game is, can they get pressure on Peyton Thorne? Whether that's, just rushing 4, do they have the guys up front that can get to the quarterback? I think they should have those guys, but they haven't really been able to do that consistently. And then does Durkin try to dial up any kind of exotic pressure? Because we didn't see much of that against Miami, and they got burned with him having all day. So interested to see how Durkin handles it. But to your point, the jury is still very much out on Miami, but I think Tyler Van Dyke is a better quarterback than Peyton Thorne, especially downfield. So even if A&M plays a similar game defensively to what they did against Miami, I don't know if Auburn has the weapons or the quarterback to exploit it nearly as much. So I think A&M will be able to bottle Auburn's offense up enough, to your point, to let the offense on the Aggie side go to work, because they have been playing very well. I think they're going to play well in this game. With Weigman back there and Petrino calling plays, I think for the first time in a while, Aggie fans have a little bit of trust in the offense that, okay, this team can go get you, 4 touchdowns, 30+ points in a game, even in the SEC. So I think they're going to do that in this one. I do like it to be pretty close, just because I don't know. I don't trust A&M to take care of business like they should. But I do think they'll win.
So, boss man, you've got all those wide receivers. You got Reuben Owens, which, by the way, while we're doing this, let me know how Reuben Owens is doing. But do you trust that defense? Do you think DJ Durkin can do enough to get wins against really good teams in the SEC West?
That's a great question. That's the $1 million question, or the $75 million question if you're A&M, because as many in the national media like to talk about, if A&M doesn't do well this year, the boosters are circling and they're thinking about firing Jimbo. I don't know how much truth there is to that. That's a whole lot of money. But as far as Durkin goes, nobody's real happy with the way that it's been going for the last couple of years, the last 2 years that he's been in College Station. We've seen, multiple 3-man fronts with no pass rush. Sometimes you get a 4-man front, no pass rush, even with all those 5 stars. The secondary has been porous and they can't tackle. So we'll see what it looks like. That's the key to the key to the game for me as well. Kind of like Hammer touched on. A&M's got to get a pass rush. Their secondary has to batten down the hatches. But at the end of the day, I really don't think that Auburn has enough on offense to overpower A&M and their athletes. I do think A&M will be able to get some pressure on Auburn. Another big question mark is Jarquez Hunter. Not sure that he's going to be 100%. He played last week, but he's kind of been dealing with an ankle injury. And to me, this is a game that Auburn needs all hands on deck. Auburn has played A&M well traditionally, whether it's at home or away. I think it's about a 500 split between the two since A&M joined the conference. But overall, you talked about it a little bit. Connor Weigman and those guys, they're starting to hum. They look good against Miami, even when Miami was even though Miami beat them. But overall, I think we look back at that game, and I think at the end of the year, we may think that Miami was actually a really good team. And that said more about the Hurricanes than it may have about A&M. I do think as A&M gets further down in their schedule, they play better teams in the SEC West. You may see that defense really be susceptible through the air again. But I don't think Auburn is the team to do that. But I do think as well that one thing that Aggie's got to watch out for is that running quarterbacks have been able to exploit A&M's defenses in the past. And we saw last week, Peyton Thorne had a great game, looked good running the ball. They've got Robbie Ashford as well if they need to put him in. So I'm watching that just to make sure that A&M can keep that under control. But I think they can. At the end of the day, I think A&M has too many athletes and they pull this one out.
So listen to Auburn's schedule coming up, the stretch that they're about to enter into. They have A&M on Saturday. Then they play Georgia. They get them at home. So, at least you get Georgia at home. Then you go at LSU versus Ole Miss. That's the next 4 games for the Auburn Tigers. This probably is the stretch that is going to define the season for the Auburn Tigers.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
There's a lot of schools that are looking at their schedule thinking the same thing. I know Arkansas has a gauntlet coming up. A&M has, this game followed by Arkansas, followed by Bama. So it's going to be a tough stretch. I mean, we talked about it. I'll keep this short, but the SEC West, it's going to be really competitive. I don't think there's a team that's terrible that's just going to get blown out, although Mississippi State might have something to say about that, but we'll see. But otherwise, I think they're going to be pretty competitive games across the board. And we could see total chaos or, a team or two will separate. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm personally looking forward to chaos. Boss man, what is your pick for the game?
I'm picking A&M. I'm with Hank. I'm an Aggie. I have watched A&M not cover and not do so well in these games. However, at the end of the day, I think A&M's a better team here. I think they pull away late. I think that Connor Weigman and those wide receivers and that offense is doing good. I haven't heard too much about Reuben Owens. I think he's going to be okay. A&M overall is very healthy. Jimbo's talked about that, even though they had a couple sit out last week, including Evan Stewart, their top wide receiver. Noah Thomas was banged up as well. He's going to be okay. But I'm picking A&M by 11, A&M to cover.
All right, Hammer, what do you got?
I got A&M 28, Auburn 24. So I've got Auburn covering, but A&M winning.
Okay. I don't have Auburn scoring that many points. I'm thinking 24-10 type game. Maybe even A&M gets into the 30s. Like I said, this is a little bit of a reality check for the Auburn Tigers. Now, in this game that is a battle of the not Vanderbilt worst teams in the SEC right now, and that is MSU at South Carolina. South Carolina actually looked good against Georgia, but a lot of that might be that Georgia just was like, hey, we're not up for this game. It just doesn't matter. And then whenever they turned it on, they turned it on. Mississippi State looked like they looked like Dookie. I mean, you can just honestly say they looked like Dookie. And I'm not even talking about the uniforms. They look really, really bad. And Malik Neighbors probably just caught the ball again. And this air raid offenses, and this is what everybody doesn't know. When you have an air raid quarterback, you cannot do that. That is like ethanol in your gas tank. Once you start doing air raid, you have to keep doing air raid. And if you try to get them to do something else, you end up with what Jackson Dart was last year, because he came from the air raid at USC to Ole Miss. It took a year to get it out of the system. And Will Rogers, I just genuinely don't think he is going to be the starter by the time the Egg Bowl happens. I think it's going to be Mike Wright's team. This one, though, I really like South Carolina in this game. I think Columbia is a difficult place to play, and Spencer Rattler is actually playing pretty well. Boss man.
Yeah, I agree with you on South Carolina here. Mississippi State just looks discombobulated. I mean, the only way that you can try to revamp your roster and change it up from an air raid to a different system is by almost overhauling it through the transfer portal. And Mississippi State got a couple transfers, but it's not like they overhauled their roster to do that. So everybody knows, even when you try to implement an air raid, it took Mike Leach a couple years to get his air raid system intact in Starkville. So now you're going the other way, and it's going to take you a couple years to get that right. The other part to me is that Zach Arnett's a defensive guy. And if you're looking like that on defense, LSU's a good team. I'm not saying they're not, but I expected Mississippi State to put up more of a fight than what they did against the Tigers. So
not that good.
Yeah, right. So it was not that good, but better than what they showed. I'll say that. So
yeah,
go ahead.
The announcers, and during the game, they were talking about the LSU Mississippi State game. And there's like, hey, you couldn't do much better than this if you were going against air. And whenever the announcer says that, you just need to quit. You just need to give up. I mean, it's over. It's obviously not your day. But I mean,
yeah.
Malik Neighbors like 500 yards receiving. And hey, there was one good running play, I guess, for Mississippi State. So they can hang their head on that. So they just looked really, really bad.
They did. The good thing for Mississippi State is that South Carolina hasn't looked that great either. Now, they did play a good game last week against Georgia. They played a good first half, I'll say. The second half, Georgia came out and smacked them, as most people thought they would. But when I was writing our previews for biscuitssec.com, I was looking at it, and it's a little bit like looking in a mirror for both of these teams. You got bad offensive line play. You got porous secondaries. And you have offensive coordinators who are trying to gel with their new teams, and they're having a little bit of trouble. Mississippi State, I think, is having more trouble than South Carolina. And for South Carolina's advantage, they have Spencer Rattler, and they've got Xavier Leggett. And Xavier Leggett is a stud. That kid has been all over the field for the last few weeks, even against Georgia. Juice Wells is solid as well. Unfortunately, Juice Wells got hurt. It looks like he's going to be out for a couple weeks. So hope he gets better soon, and look forward to seeing him on the field. But in this one, I just think South Carolina is the better team right now. I think Spencer Rattler is the X factor here, and I'm picking South Carolina, especially because it's at night at Williams-Brice. That is a difficult place to play. I saw it was sold out, as they sell out most SEC games. So Sandstorm's going to be rocking in there. I'm taking South Carolina by about 5 or 6.
You know, my compatriot on SEC After Dark, Corey Burton, hosts his Georgia show with Israel Troop, who played at Georgia. And he said that South Carolina was the most difficult place for him to play in the SEC.
I believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was one of those things like, really? Yeah. You don't say. So what you got, Hammer?
Yeah, pretty similar thought process here. I think, when I was looking at this matchup, clearly Mississippi State wants to run the ball, right? We've seen that in every game that they've played, that they are a run-first team now. And they, I think, are going to be able to find more running room against South Carolina. I believe the Gamecocks are currently 13th in the SEC in run defense, somewhere around 150 a game. So Mississippi State will be able to find more running room than they did against LSU. And I do like Woody Marks, their running back. I think he's got a little bit of juice. So I think they're going to look slightly better on offense. Still don't trust them to throw the ball. And I don't trust them, overall to be in sync in a road environment at night that y'all pointed out is really difficult. So I like South Carolina to win here. I think I had them winning 27-23. So I've got Mississippi State covering. If they can't cover this one, then, like you said, they're probably relegated to the Vanderbilt basement of the SEC because they looked as bad as you could possibly look against LSU. So I'm hoping for a bit of a bounce back, although I don't expect them to win.
Yeah, right now they're Vandy without the degree. So I would take South Carolina in this game too, because if you look at them, you're right. There are mirror images of each other. The difference is Rattler is better than Rogers, and go that direction. Now, going to a fourth game, we normally only do 3, but we'll do 4 today. Arkansas is going down to Baton Rouge to play LSU in a battle for the boot. I don't know about the status of Rocket Sanders. Arkansas kind of dropped a game late against BYU last week. This Arkansas team had a ton of hope. It's now all of a sudden it could go really sideways really quick if they drop this game and Texas A&M.
Take it, Hammer. Oh, is he frozen?
Yeah, I think he's frozen.
Oh, we'll get him back in a minute. Well,
at least he's smiling.
He is smiling. Yeah, that's a good little clip we could take right there. Oh man. Yep. So Rocket Sanders, I've been keeping an eye on that for our newsletter. If folks aren't subscribed, you can go to biscuitsandsec.com/newsletter. We write a newsletter every week for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just to give you the nuggets and news on what's going on around the SEC. But I've been keeping an eye on that for that. And Rocket Sanders looks like it's up in the air. So we'll see. They're hopeful, but they're not sure. And it's a knee issue, I think, is what's going on. So never really know with the knee. But I was looking at this game, and before Arkansas lost to BYU at home, I thought that this game could be a little bit closer. I just, when I was looking at Arkansas preseason, you looked at them and you said, hey, they've got, a lot of returning returning starters on defense. And they lost a couple of key pieces, of course, Drew Sanders, Bumper Pool, as well as Jalen Cattle onto the portal. But they did have a lot of returning still. The issue was that the guys returning were one of the worst pass defenses in the SEC last year. And through a few games now, it looks like they haven't improved that much. And we just saw what LSU did to Mississippi State and their secondary. So the fact that this is at home too for LSU in Baton Rouge, in Tiger Stadium at night, that is never a fun place to play. With AJ Green has filled in nicely for Rocket Sanders, but Rocket Sanders is irreplaceable. That guy, he's a game changer and he makes plays. So if they don't have him, I don't think Arkansas has a shot. Really, the other big thing for Arkansas has been the offensive line play. It has not been up to snuff for what you would think for Sam Pittman, who is such a revered offensive line coach. So I think that LSU is going to be able to exploit that. I think they've got Harold Perkins, they got Mason Smith, they got Mekhi Wingo. They've got a bunch of guys, I think, that are going to be in KJ Jefferson's face all night. KJ Jefferson plays decent under pressure. So I think that Arkansas is actually going to make this more of a game than people probably expect. But at the end of the day, I think LSU pulls away, and I'm picking this one, LSU 38, Arkansas 24.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I think LSU is going to get through this game, and if everything goes to chalk, you have Ole Miss and LSU next week, and potentially the game of the year in the SEC West. And that's weird to think of, but that's what this weekend means for that game. Anyway, for Hammer and Bossman Slim, I'm Stephen Willis. I hope everybody had a good time, and we'll talk to you next time. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks for having us.
All right.